Hello, everyone. Welcome to the B2B SaaS podcast. I'm your host, Whippy, and today we have David Danishkar with us. David here is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Whippy. Hey, David, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah. All right, David. So let's try to understand what Whippy does, right? So can you just explain a bit about that?
Yeah, Whippy is an automation platform. It uses a lot of automation AI for people in the real world or old school world, as I call it. So there's a lot of automation AI for e-commerce, for example, but for for a staffing company or a pharmacist or a lawyer, a lot of people are doing a lot of manual work. What we do is we sit down and understand, like, especially on communication, like what are things we can shore up, and we see, like, a classic example we see is like when an HR company, someone applies for a position, person goes, looks at the resume, shoots them a call, a text, an email, tries to get information from them, puts it into their CRM, and a lot of that stuff can be automated. And so the platform uses text, email, and soon voice to help triage those situations, whether it's customer support, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing. And right now, the motion has been mainly like SMB, but we've created a very robust API. So even a large company that wants this, and that'd be our more of an enterprise motion, can use our API to build it, to buy, rather than have to build all of this themselves off of Twilio or something like that.
So sounds a bit interesting, right? So is the product, built to support a lot of use cases by default? Like I look at, emails and their sequences, campaigns, and then there were, calls. Looks like a whole bunch of them, right? So and that could cater to anybody and everybody, right? So like just help us understand like what's the vision or thought process here, right? So like how are you positioning this product?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a challenge, right? Because most people say to focus on a specific niche, a specific product. And I think my last company that I was at, called Bloom Nation, we did e-commerce for local florists. So the messaging was very clear. The positioning was very clear. I mean, the only thing is what we ran into was the addressable market, right? Your TAM in SaaS, you were very good. You were like an industry leader, but it was fixed. When we started Whippy, we thought, let's look at problems that people have and let's see if we can solve those problems with a solution. And so it was very hard to start Whippy because we didn't know who we were. And what's happened is, in each case, what we've done is we've solved a real problem for a specific niche in a vertical.
Mhm.
And then we've really created a use case study. We've created a testimonial. We've productized it and create templates around it. And then we go to market in that industry. But it is much more difficult to come really wide and then have to narrow down your focus, which is what we've done. But it is great for at this stage in our company because now we have someone focused in this vertical. It's almost like companies within a company.
Yeah. So just help us understand your customer base, right? So how many paying customers or paying businesses uh, do you have on your platform today?
I think last I checked, somewhere in the neighborhood of 600 to 700 paid accounts. Right now, I think the majority are more SMB. So it's like, let's say 5 to 10K ARR. So um, somewhere in this three plus million ARR kind of as a company. But what's happening recently is we're starting to see, like, we're trying to push up market, as I mentioned, and we've now have some deals that we've either closed, a couple that we've closed. We're in the conversation. They're like 100K plus ARR. And that pitch is a little bit different. It's not like going to an SMB and just being like, when you do this, you pay someone, I don't know, let's say you pay someone 40 grand to do that. And this software will do that. And, if we charge you 10 or 15% of that value, it's like 6K ARR. In the enterprise motion, it is, you want to build this off of existing tools. You need several developers. It's going to take you a year or two.
Yeah.
That's developer resources. So that's a lot of maintenance. Also communication is like a messy space, like things go down, or AT&T or T-Mobile, and you have to deal with that issue with Twilio. A lot of people just want to offload that, especially at the enterprise one.
So just help us understand these 700 accounts that you have, right? So do they belong to a particular, vertical niche or industry, or are they using primarily for a certain use case, or like is it just spread across the spectrum?
It's spread across.
Okay. And like
So
so,
what happened?
and how does your go-to-market motion, like how what's the GTM motion here, right? So if it's spread across so well, right? How are you sort of driving all of these leads to your funnel? Right? Just
Yeah, our go-to-market right now is actually no inbound. It's 90% outbound. So it's a lot of cold call, cold email. So there's two ways to go at it. If you want to spread it wide, you might want to go at competitors. But you know, you want to see where you can drive someone value. You want to see where someone pays. So I think what you start to do is like if you go after these verticals and you find niche A and they're willing to pay more because you're driving them more value. Like what you actually end up doing, this is like a more of a focused go-to-market is you're like, cool. I'm actually want to see if I can create a case study. And can we get testimonials from you? Is there a trade show you go to? Is there a group you're a part of? And then they start to help you. And then you go from 1 to 10 because you've already validated, wow, this is someone. And I think we validated based on like, is it a daily use case? Is it usage? You want people where like if Whippy was to go down for 1 minute, like they can't run their business. So in our case, for communication, we want people that use this operationally. They use this as a daily use case. So when you find someone who's willing to pay for that, then you like get a rep and you really focus. And those cold calls are very different. It's like, hey, David, who you might know, does X, Y, and Z with us. And it's resulted in this. Do you have time for a meeting? And you really then scale sales that way. So sometimes you go broad to like catch some fish. But when you figure out, oh, this is actually something really meaningful, you really focus on that. And then you have a rep really drive
So
that
can
vertical
you
or that
give
niche.
us few sort of cohorts, right? So where you've been doing this, maybe lawyers or whatever those segments that you really double down on. It's some example.
Yeah, let's just take lawyers, for example, since you mentioned it. So like,
So I want to
what's an
hear
example?
from your data, like who those primarily are. Like,
Yeah, so we'll take lawyers. So I think one good example of lawyers is like there's many lawyers. There's family law, there's divorce law, there's personal injury. And I think of those, the personal injury ones have been better because what ends up happening is each case can be worth 1 million. So you also want someone where like the win can be a high ticket because then the time to realize ROI is quicker, correct? You also want someone in a competitive landscape because if you give them automation and AI, especially on a sales call, like they won't care about the money. They want a competitive advantage and you want a clear use case. So for them, for example, I know when someone, fills out a form on their website, if you can have a voice or SMS AI bot come in and like quickly say, I want to triage this and get to the right person, like that's the difference between like getting or losing $1 million case. So in that case, that's an example of finding people online and specifically focusing on the niche. And then when you do that, in that example, we had a really good lawyer by the name of Bob Simon, who has a lot of pull, who's really close in the industry and became an ambassador for us as well. Moral Theory Jr., a big lawyer here in Los Angeles. So that would be an example of really going broad and then like really focusing.
makes sense, right? So and like how does the sales cycle look, right? In your case, like how long does it take to maybe close a typical deal?
I think so. In our case, the sales cycle in general, it depends on like those two different motions. I think in the enterprise world, so on the SMB world, it generally can be pretty quick. I mean, it can be like, let's just say 60 to 90 days. Let's say 60 days on average. But in the enterprise world, the enterprise world that we're going after, it's generally longer for one of two reasons. One, they like to get in sandbox, test stuff, test it with a location. So there's generally that motion. And then the second thing is they're using a platform now in the enterprise world. They're generally like a 1 or 2 year locked contract. So you're kind of doing things in a microcosm until they get out of that. So I would say for the enterprise world that we're living in, that's more like a 1 year sales cycle.
Got it, right? So and like what's the vision here? Right? So how do you intend to grow? Like what's the GTM motion going to be for the next 1 or 2 years here? So is it still going to be primarily outbound, or are you working on any other channels to
Yeah,
drive more traffic?
other channels. I think that's the main thing this year. So the outbound was great. It's something that like I was the only rep and started in the beginning. Now we have 3 SDRs. But I think if you look at like B2B channels, there are many of them. I think I'm proud of doing outbound first because sometimes that's the hardest. It's also the most scalable. People do the others first, like inbound or referrals. That's how most SaaS companies start. And I think that's difficult. So I like to do the difficult thing first. But no, I think now there are other channels. So one obviously would be like inbound, like, doing more content. For example, referrals, affiliates, channel partners, trade shows, um, integration partnerships. So I think those are all things, even the enterprise is a new motion.
Yeah.
So I think those are new channels that we're really pushing after. We're like right now looking to hire like a marketing lead to help get some of those, I guess, organic channels kind of started. And they help, by the way. I think one of the things that I didn't think of enough, and I think now I think of more, is by doing that stuff, it makes sales outbound easier because if you have good, and we've created this, but good case studies, good marketing, a better website, more brand, it makes that call better, right? It makes even that sales reps outbound process. So they work together. And I think that is the big goal for this year.
Talk about the team here, David, right? So how many engineers you've got on your team and like what about the rest of them?
So our team is around probably in terms of engineers, there's 10 engineers. There's our partner, Jack Kennedy, worked with me at Bloom Nation before. Phenomenal gentleman who's really just owned kind of product development and just really taken us, I think, to the next level. I believe right now he has 8, potentially 9 engineers. So I would say that's just consider for easy ratios. Just imagine that to be somewhere around 40 to 50% of the company. And then on the other side, the main places that you have are on sales and customer success. Those would be the other sides, basically, obviously bringing it on, implementation, onboarding. And then that's a big thing I think we're pushing on as well, is negative net retention. So in the B2B world, you have like logo retention, which is just like, I have 100 customers. It's inevitable. Some are going to leave. You just got to take that and learn from that. So let's say I go to 90 customers. That's like a 90%, logo retention. But those 90 customers don't pay me $1 each. They pay me $2 each. So my $100 is now worth 180.
And what's
So
the
that is
NRR today? So what's your NRR network?
Yeah. I think we're targeting, actually, believe it or not. That was our target, but was like 1% a month, negative 1% a month. Which is pretty big. So that may be too lofty, but I think kind of what we're looking at is, I think we want to get to like 100. We have some things coming up.
Mhm.
So all the net retention upgrades have been purely usage based. So we're a usage based platform. So I would say probably for every $100 that we brought in, we're trying to get a year later, at least right now, to let's say 120.
Mhm.
That's kind of where we're at. But I think that's just on usage. Now what's going to happen is we're bringing other channels, and those could be product upsells, and that could dramatically change that as well. But right now, our kind of goal is to target 1% a month.
And like how long has it been, David, since you started the company, right? What's the journey like? What's the backstory here?
Yeah. So I would say Bloom Nation, which was the last company, we scaled it to around 100 people. I think the sales org was around 40, and I think ARR was in that 10 to 20 million range. Now, here about 3 years ago with my partner, Jack Kennedy, a little more, we didn't start with Whippy. We actually started like just getting back into it and like consulting, like building websites, looking at problems and getting on the inside of these local businesses. And I think that's where we saw
What
communication.
happened with the previous business? Did you manage to
It's
sell
still,
it or
no, it's still there. I'm still
okay?
on the cap table. It's still, I think, actually after I left, they'd raised more capital. So I think when I left, they'd raised another, I don't know, 10 or $15 million. So, I sit on the cap table. I kind of view it as, like, monopoly money until, there's some type of material exit. Um, but I think that's helped because where a lot of
And
people would
why
have
did you get into typical consulting or helping out these people? Like where did that come from, right? So why did you just go on starting consulting business? Like, what was the story there?
well, I never want to start a consulting business, but what we both thought is, let's start like my partner was helping to build just some basic infrastructure for companies. I think we started with like dentists and different stuff. I think the best thing to do is like partner with them, build stuff and see their problems and honestly see what they'll pay for. I think the one thing I've mentioned on other podcasts that I've done is, I think the classic mistake a B2B founder does is he goes to his friend and says, how much will you pay for this? Do you like this? Or sorry, would you buy this? And they say yes. Everyone's going to say yes. But with these customers, we would say, hey, we'll build you something. Here's our Stripe link. Go ahead and purchase. And then they have a pain there. So, and then when we're inside, we're like, what are your other pains? And we realized like a lot of it was on the messaging and communication front. And we go and sit at their office and see people like, in the dance's example, I would call them and like say, hey, actually, I want to book an appointment. Oh, actually, can you give me a call later? And no one would follow up or stuff like that. So I think we just saw gaps. And the only way to see that is to almost act as a consultant for the time being to really understand pains that people face.
And then when did you actually move from that, primarily started focusing on enterprise sales?
Well, I think that wasn't even Whippy. I mean, that his name was Whippy, but that was more like we were doing web builds and different stuff.
Yeah.
When we started moving to the world now, which was messaging, and our software does, like team messaging, it does mass messaging, it does automated messaging. There's a bunch of integrations. Like we probably started moving in that direction a little more than 2 years ago. And that's when we really started to see accounts go. And we hit a couple accounts that really helped us supercharge ARR, which were, by the way. So the only way we could build things is if people paid.
And you've grown it to, grown past $1 million, right? So in terms of ARR.
Yeah, we're above 3 now, and where our goal is probably to be at 10 in the next 18 to 24 months is where we're trying to go. And I think that goes back to your other question. I think outbound is a great channel, but I think to do that in an economic climate like this, right, and still stay bootstrapped and lean, you do need to hit those other channels.
And then like, where's this money going to come from? Is it from enterprise deals or is it primarily from SMBs?
No, I think that's a good question too. So like when I started this year, we created when we had our team meeting, rather than say, hey, we're going to bring in this revenue, each channel that someone is associated with had an amount. So like even the customer success, I said, we expect to bring this much net retention, like retention. Then the enterprise rep, this much revenue. From the SMB rep, this much revenue. On like my end, which is like the partnerships and like, let's just say like the trade show or outside sales, this amount. So I think it's from all, and I think we kind of put our estimates there and we kind of revisit them. But to get there, I think a simple way to say that is like probably, I mean, outbound, SMB outbound has to be a little bit larger. Enterprise is something that will get larger than that as we start to build more products. Enterprise really is, I think, follow the leader. So in the enterprise world, it really is important to have a couple people that will go to bat to you and like their competitors, like, I want that too. So I think to build those things, which we're doing now, you'll see a little bit of a lag, and then you'll see a boost.
So when did you invest in, getting all of these compliance certifications, right? I see SOC 2, HIPAA, all of it, right? And I see them as being add-ons, right? So looks like you've been planning all of this enterprise solution for a while. So when did you invest in, what was the journey like?
That's a good question too. Yeah. So like, that was early on. So early on, my co-founder, we were looking at some enterprise accounts early on. And so we realized, we have to go through all those accreditations. And I think for HIPAA, we just to be even simple, like one of the people that wanted to use the software early was my parents. And we're like, they're a doctor. So we just knew if we want to, be a big company, and it happens to be one of the verticals that we're having success in, does use HIPAA. So HIPAA is important. And SOC 2, you're correct. It was us having the confidence to say that we are going to go up market and we want to get this, because that's like, as you probably know, like if you don't have those things, it's just not a conversation to be had.
Yeah. Like, and how much did you cost you in terms of money and efforts, right? So, I mean, a specific question, but a lot of SaaS founders are sort of trying to make that decision, that should we go for that or not? It's going to, cost us 40, 50 grand and it's going to take a ton of developer time, right? So is it worth for a 10% team, right? So like, what's your thought, and like, what did you do in your case?
That was a decision I have to give the onus to my co-founder. Because when we sat down, we kind of talked about stuff, but I would say on a lot of the product decision making, even though I'm the CEO and we are partners there. And I think that's something that he actually wanted to take on. And I think while we had the time to do that, you're right, it was dev resources, but I have a fanatical business partner who is like, I can still do the things I'm doing and do that too. And so I was like, when do you sleep? And he's like, I'm not looking to sleep right now. Like I'm looking to get all this stuff done. So if you have someone that's that motivated, like what do you tell them? Do you tell them, no, let's wait? No, you go with the power, go with the momentum.
Yeah. One last question, right? So are you going to stay bootstrapped, or do you plan to raise on any external funding?
No, I think we plan to stay bootstrapped. I think it's given us the power to make the right decisions. Like I think if we raise money, I've just seen it where it's like, like, oh, this is not going well, the sales motion. Oh, let's just wait. You can't bleed money anymore. I think if we were to ever take money, it would be something that would be like a liquidity event. That is, unless like there is a very clear reason to take money. Like, oh, there's this industry and like the competitor, it's going to take them 1 year to catch up and there's 10 million in ARR there, 5 million ARR. The only way to grab that in the next year is to like scale X. That would be a good example. But there has to be a high return on investment because when you do that, I do think you give up some of the optionality that you have as a company.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, David. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. Right, hope to scale Whippy to much greater heights.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here. Thank you.